Welcome to the Business After Hours, where the ties loosen, the suit relax, and we talk business without the boardroom. Grab your favorite drink, kick back, and let's dive into the world of business after hours.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Business After Hours podcast here with Jared and our guest Joe. How are you gentlemen doing today?
Fantastic. Happy to be here.
Same. So Joe, tell us a little bit about yourself and then tell us a little bit about your company.
You bet. I'm Joe Guzman. I'm the founder and CEO of SpaceCowboy ADR. And I grew up in Houston, the Space City. So I kind of grew up around space and Johnson Space Center and the Houston Astros and the Houston Rockets. And it's just kind of I guess, just kind of home for me.
As an Astros fan, do you guys still bang on garbage cans or?
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up on the northwest side of Houston and found my way into the military academy, and so was up there working on a electrical engineering degree, and I got this opportunity to step into the space industry as an intern. And I got to go intern with the National Security Agency. And at the time, this was back in 1992 or 93. And the Strategic Defense Initiative, or also known as the Star Wars program, was still around. It was a missile defense program designed to protect the United States from Soviet missile attack. And it relied on a lot of space assets. And so when I went down there, I got to actually, get exposed to what space operations was and how we were going to use it. And it was just really fascinating for me. And then that internship ended. I ended up graduating and I completed 8 years of service in the field artillery branch. So I was a cannoneer and taught gunnery and commanded a cannon unit. And then I transitioned, still in the Army, over into space operations for the first time. And I took a trip downrange to Korea for about 1.5 years. And I got exposed to how the Army uses space technologies to improve operations on the ground. And the thing that I got to work on back then was called Blue Force tracking. And we were, for the first time, really using satellite technologies, texting, GPS, and that kind of thing to really inform headquarters where our forward units were and be able to, communicate with them over the horizon using space technologies. And having served in an operational unit that did not have those kind of technologies available, it blew my mind, the possibilities that we were going to be able to do with this stuff. So I was really excited about doing space operations in the Army, and kind of like bought in whole hog and wound up doing a full career in space ops. So I did 18 additional years doing space operations. And one of the jobs that I had during that time frame, I was actually doing orbital analysis. So I was trained to take data that was coming from our surveillance network and do orbital determinations of satellites and debris items, and started actually contributing to our catalog of known space objects. And it was a fascinating job. And one of the things I learned there was how dangerous space debris can be to operational satellites. And my job was to help protect our nation's most precious satellite resources that were either for the intel community or for NASA with our human spaceflight program. Back then, the space shuttle was still flying, so we did protection missions for the space shuttle and also the ISS. And that ISS mission really continues to this day. And also, anytime the shuttle resupply or astronauts and cosmonauts are ferried back and forth to the station, those assets are still used to help safeguard. And so fast forward to 2020, and I retired from the Army, got out and started my own business. and I was doing space consulting and was working for a defense company that was trying to penetrate the U.S. Satellite market with some of its gear, and decided I wanted to shift away from that and really go in, try to build something meaningful for for myself and not be working for someone else. So became an entrepreneur, and I responded to a call for topics from the Space Force on what to do about space debris. And so I submitted a proposal to investigate using small satellites or microsatellites to remove what I call medium-sized debris. But they're debris items that are too small to really track using our current architecture, but they're still lethal or potentially lethal to operational satellites today. And there's a million pieces of these things running around, not being actively tracked and presenting a real risk to active satellites in low Earth orbit. And so I decided to go after that as my business, and um, we won that STTR, Small Business Tech Transfer Award from the Space Force. We did an initial development of the technology with our partners at Southwest Research Institute, which is in San Antonio, and we put together this idea to use a small spacecraft to go around and collect space debris and actually do that as a service to other either government or commercial customers that are flying their satellites. And so that's how Space Cowboy was born. I kind of convinced myself that that was going to be my passion. That was my kind of my life's masterpiece, so to speak, and uh, quit my job essentially and just went full time as as an entrepreneur and kind of living off my Army retirement and making a run at putting a dent in the space debris population.
How much debris is up there?
Well, there's a lot of different measurements. So there's debris of all sizes. Okay, so above 10 centimeters is what we can actually track, and that population is somewhere in like the 35,000 category area. There's about 10,000, a little more than 10,000 active satellites. So satellites that are actually doing work, numbers about 10,000, and about 35,000 pieces of debris of various kinds that are being tracked. Now, all those are greater than 10 centimeters. The 1 to 10 centimeter range is estimated the population to be about 1 million pieces that are not being tracked. And then the millimeter size, so less than a centimeter in size, are estimated to be in the hundreds of millions. And I've heard numbers as high as 300 million pieces of millimeter sized debris. These are like paint chips and stuff like that could present damage, but there's ways to shield spacecraft that can keep them relatively safe from debris of that size. But that 1 to 10 centimeter is enough mass in orbit going fast enough that it can ruin a satellite's day, or at least do some damage if it hits. And that damage could be it could be catastrophic, or it could be like a flat tire, so to speak.
So first I want to say, like, the Blue Force tracker, I definitely remember that thing. It was really finicky when we had it in country. So it was kind of a cool system to be honest. But my question is, with doing such a niche, you know, career, I guess, or company, did you
Yeah.
have troubles getting started to get that funding going, or what was it like getting started in such a niche?
Yeah, really the issue with space debris remediation, or ADR, active debris remediation, which is what I'm doing, is that there's not really a market for it right now. It's really a futuristic problem. So it's good that people are thinking about it, but it's not something that is like in our face, right now, as something that's really doable. And so when you're that early, it's tough to get investors to come on board and help you develop the technology. So I really look at it as an opportunity because we are a first mover in this area. Space Cowboy is really a first mover in medium-sized debris data collection and removal. Um, I think that there's a lot of shaping that we can do to actually lay the groundwork for this industry that's developing. And so I've went out and I've found a few organizations that are working hard on that. One is the Space Force Association, SFA, and so SFA their mission is to rally the resources of our nation to really help the Space Force do its business. And one of those things is protecting satellites. So one of their core, Space Force business is protecting U.S. satellites, and active debris remediation is one way that you can protect U.S. assets in space. And so SFA has been a really great partner. I've been volunteering with them since 2020, and I'm actually the regional vice president of the Space Force Association for the Central region, which includes pretty much all the central United States, from Texas and New Mexico in the south, all the way up to from Wisconsin over to Montana in the north. And so that's a wide range, and there's lots of space stuff going on in there outside of Texas, of course, but New Mexico, Nebraska, Colorado, of course, and then even up into the Dakotas are heavy into space, and there's really space companies popping up all over the nation, and so what we're trying to do is rally all those resources to come and provide technologies and trained people, or trying to help expose young children in schools to more and more space technology, so that they can be inspired to grow up and participate in the space industry in one way, shape, or form. So that's one organization, and then there's also an organization that was stood up by the National Space Council, and that's called COSMIC, the Consortium for Space Mobility and ISAM Capabilities. And this consortium is a group of U.S. Industry, government, and academia, and we're all trying to shape the policies, regulations, and really the norms that will be used to operate this future space ecosystem that's coming in the next 5-10 years. And so participating and providing some leadership in those forums are a couple of ways that I'm helping to shape the market that I'm going to be, in as a capability provider, a service provider, in that 2030 to 2035 timeframe. And so I think that there's a lot of active things that I can do, and to help that will start opening up that future market, and kind of that's what I'm using my platform to be able to do right now.
That's great. So what's your thoughts on, I guess, SpaceX and what they're doing and helping?
Well, I mean, quite honestly, really the commercial space industry would not be where it is without the likes of SpaceX. So it used to be, a huge barrier to entry for companies to get anything into space because the cost was so high. And with Elon really lowering those costs to get into space by providing reusable launch vehicles and being able to provide lift into orbit at a relatively low price, and it's been a tremendous boost. There's no way that small businesses could pay for rockets to launch their own satellites. So without the likes of SpaceX, it just wouldn't ever happen. And so it's extremely important. And there's more commercial launch that's coming on board. Firefly is one of those. It's right here in Texas. Rocket Labs. There's a bunch of them, and those are really what they call vertical lift. So those are like the traditional rockets that take satellites into orbit. And there's also what they call horizontal lift, or basically planes that take off a lot like the Virgin Orbit did, and then they'll uh, launch a rocket from the air into space so that it can deliver uh, small payloads, and that horizontal launch industry is also developing. There's a lot of good things about horizontal launch. So, all these commercial launch capabilities that are lowering the price to get into orbit are enabling small businesses and entrepreneurs like myself to even be able to think about putting something in space to do business. And that's I mean, it really goes back to Elon's vision about lowering those costs.
Absolutely.
Have you personally been up to space?
No, no, I haven't. The closest I've been to space was watching a rocket launch uh, from Disney World,
Yeah. Okay. Mm.
which was pretty cool in itself. But I have visited a couple of bases that do launch rockets, but I haven't been up close or been on a rocket going into space. So I don't really have any desire to go to space personally, but definitely have a burning desire to put my own quote unquote Roombas in space to clean up space debris.
So I got a quick question. This is kind of left field, but what are your what do you say to flat earthers? And those people that believe that there's no space.
Yeah.
I'm just curious what your
So
thoughts.
so my personal belief is that everybody operates inside their own reality. So
That's true.
sometimes there's people that are in a reality where who knows what's going on in their reality. It's not really mine to say. I'll say that I don't believe in flat Earth theories because I've personally interacted with satellites that are going around Earth, and there's just overwhelming evidence in my reality that tells me that the flat Earth theory is uh, you know debunked.
Yeah.
So, what about the moon landing?
Oh, I have
Yeah,
my
that's a
I
good
have my
one.
own personal thoughts on the moon landing. Some people think that uh, either we were faking it or we went and did it. I
Yeah.
think we actually did both. I think that we did land on the moon, but it was so hard to actually film and prove it that they may have resorted to filming some footage to make it appear like we had TV coverage
I can see that.
Yeah.
to
Fair.
be a
Yeah.
proof. So I think it was a bit of both. I think that there were elements that were probably you know uh, uh, faked or whatever, so that we could kind of have more conclusive evidence, that we landed on the moon. And so I think I've given that a lot of thought, and that seems very plausible to me. And there was a recent movie I think that they kind of used that as the backdrop of the story. That we were landing on the moon, but we weren't able to really prove it to anybody. So it was going to take some kind of a production to make people believe that we actually did it. And so that's what I think.
No, I like that.
I like that. Yeah. Yeah. Because I usually was on the one. You only think about the one or two options. I didn't. I never put it where they could actually do both.
Well, because that's
Right.
mainly a lot of the questions that people have is just the fact that the cameras were up there already and whatnot.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of that footage that those conspiracy theorists will show, that it's actually hard to deny that, hey, that looks pretty fake, you know.
Mhm.
And so, but I really do believe that we did it. I've studied it. I've worked in the space industry. I know that the technology that came out of the space program was amazing. And I just personally believe that we actually did do it. Um, but at the same time, I know that appearances and what you can show on TV is tremendously important, and so being able to show some actual footage, uh, was something that would have been really important to win the space race, to really prove it. And it's I don't know that for a fact, but that just seems like a plausible
No, that's good. That's a
explanation
good
for
way to
both.
put it. Good. What are your thoughts, or do you see yourself working with other countries like Russia and their space program as well?
So there's some very interesting angles to that. So the large pieces of debris I mentioned, there's about 35,000 total, and many of those are hundreds of kilograms. Like they're large, defunct satellites or expended rocket bodies or spent upper stages and those kind of things. And there's a company, a U.S. based company called Leo Labs that did a study, and they ranked the 50 most dangerous objects in space. And what made them dangerous is they have a lot of mass, and they're in high traffic areas. So there's a there's a distinct possibility that those pieces of space debris that nobody can control might get hit and generate more pieces,
Hmm.
and then the problem just gets worse and worse and worse. And so out of that top 50, I think at least 45 of them were either Chinese or Russian, uh, you know, space junk. And the way that the rules are laid out right now, as far as who can touch what in space, the International Space Treaty of 1967 was a document that was signed in the UN, back in the 60s, that kind of established the rules for operations in space. And one of them is that it's called the Liability Convention. And so when a nation doesn't apply to uh, commercial, companies, but it applies to nations. So even if a U.S. commercial company launches something into space, if it was launched from the United States and that company is a United States company, then the United States is the on the hook for any liability from that particular item. So in this case, these debris items are the liability of Russia and or China, and they can't be touched by other nations without their permission,
Mhm.
essentially. And so even if a U.S. company were to have the capability to remove those pieces of debris, if they touch them, it could be considered an act of war, and it certainly would be a treaty violation under the UN. So, those are kind of the rules that we're operating with right
And,
now in space.
and
That
that-
that
and
we
that's
can't.
without permission.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can't touch
okay.
them without permission. So, if you can get permission and say, "Hey, actually want to alleviate your liability by removing this piece of debris, and you pay me, to do it," then that could work out. And so I think that's honestly uh, the only way we're going to be able to address the space debris problem is to kind of work as a team. Really, space is a resource that is there for all of humanity, not just the United States and its allies and partners, but also for China and Russia. And if we really do believe, that we want to continue to operate in space, we're going to have to learn to work together. And so I think, it seems like it's really far fetched right now with all the issues between, the United States and Russia and China. But there are examples in the past where we've been able to, do cooperative things in space, with our Russian partners. And the ISS is a perfect
I was
example.
gonna say
We're
that.
still running that thing, jointly. There's Russian parts and there's U.S. parts, and even though we're kind of opposed at the political level, at this scientific level, we're still working together. So, I mean, there is some hope for us to be able to overcome some of that, back and forth. But I think that in the end, it's going to be all nations really working on the problem together, either passively by reducing the amount of debris they create, or actively by removing debris that's up there in a way that's okay with all the players, all the stakeholders, and so um, developing all those international norms of behavior is one reason I'm participating in these consortiums and organizations and stuff, because that's the only way we're going to work our way out of this program or this problem.
What's it take to get permission to clean up other people's debris?
Well, I think it would just be some kind of a communication that says, hey, we've identified this piece of debris. It's on a collision course with another spacecraft, and we'd like to remove it from orbit. And would you give us the permission to do that? And perhaps there could be some kind of deal made where we would agree to some conditions or what have you. But I think obviously full transparency, not keeping any secrets, is going to be a huge portion of doing that. So staying transparent, staying fully open kimono about everything we do in space is a big deal as we learn to operate up there with everybody else.
Absolutely.
It's just like being in traffic. Everyone's kind of got to work together to get to where they're going,
and nobody works together.
Yeah.
It seems like that a lot of times, but
especially here in Texas.
There are people out there that are like competing because they want to get to work literally like 10 seconds earlier than me or something like that. But I think my take on it is when we work together and we let each other in and merge and all this stuff, and we kind of like work as a team, everything goes a lot faster. And it's these jerks that are thinking of no one but themselves that wind up causing the problems, and people that are doing reckless activities. So we got to encourage people to do safe norms of behavior in space, just like we encourage that on the roads. And I think the more folks operate safely and and with one another, the better we can do to keep the space environment safe and clean for and open for business, because that's good for everybody when it comes down to it.
I agree.
Awesome. Yeah.
Joe, this was definitely something that didn't have on my bingo card for 2024, honestly. So appreciate it. I honestly had no clue that debris was even in space or whatnot.
Yeah, there's
an issue. Yeah.
Just to call your attention to something that happened recently. There was a satellite up in geostationary orbit, which it's way out there, much further than I'm planning on operating, but about 36,000 kilometers up into space. There was a Intelsat 33E, I believe was the name of the satellite. It was built by Boeing, and this thing just ruptured in space and created a bunch of space debris. They're counting 20 pieces or 35 pieces, somewhere in that area, but I really believe that the small pieces are going untracked, and there's many, many more than those 20 or 35. It's probably more on the order of hundreds of thousands. But that just happened over last weekend. And so it's kind of been in the headlines, but there's lots of reasons why debris is created. Some of them are just accidents. Some of them are, bolt out of the blue. Nobody knew this was going to happen. And for some reason, this satellite just ruptured. Potentially it was hit by something. Potentially it was just an onboard anomaly or whatever. But yeah, it creates a mess for other people that are operating in that same orbit, because it's a very, very valuable place to be in space, because that orbit, geostationary, is where like anything that's broadcasting television signals and stuff like that down to a set place on Earth, like your direct TVs or your satellite communications. A lot of that is out there, and a generation of a bunch of debris in that particular orbit puts a lot of assets in jeopardy. So we really need to get this capability to do cleanup in space, and that's what Space Cowboy is all about. I'm looking for investors now, so anybody who wants to connect with me, please reach out to my LinkedIn, Joe Guzman, and or Space Cowboy ADR, and I'd love to talk with you.
Absolutely. So here's both of Joe's links, and we will mark them down in the description below, so you guys don't have to worry about trying to type it out. And if you guys have any questions for Joe or investment opportunities to reach out to him, definitely reach out to him. And we'll hopefully get you on here soon and catch an update back on you.
Yeah, we definitely need to have you
absolutely.
back on.
Would love to do that. And I'll be up in Dallas tomorrow speaking at the European American Chamber of Commerce gathering there about the expansion of the space economy in the future and how we're going to do that with our European partners. So looking forward to that and hope to see some of your listeners maybe down the road.
Absolutely. Same here. Well, we appreciate you, Joe. Best of luck to you, obviously.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. And Jared, appreciate it.
Jared,
Yeah,
you got
absolutely.
anything?
No. Thanks for coming on, Joe. I feel like I have 100 more questions for you. We definitely need to get you back on because it was really insightful. And I know I learned something new from this. So thanks.
I'd love to do that. Just let me know.
Absolutely.
Y'all take care.
All right. Well, you take care too, Joe. And we'll catch you back on here again and with an update here for you.
You bet.
All right. Thanks, Joe.
All right. Space Cowboy rounds up space debris.
There you go.
I like it. Welcome to the Business After Hours, where the ties loosen, the suit relax, and we talk business without the boardroom. Grab your favorite drink, kick back, and let's dive into the world of business after hours.